Hey, welcome back, Rankers. How you going? That escalated quickly, didn't it? Everyone just calm down. Google's threatening to leave Australia in search, which is interesting, which we'll get to. The reason for this is the story I did last August. One, it's not because of my story. Don't get me wrong. It's not my fault, like my wife said. It's the story about news companies, news publishers, wanting Google to pay for their search results, their organic search results. And as I said last year, well, hang on. Your business model isn't working, so you want to take money from the people whose business model is working because you've stuck with an outdated model. And I won't go back over all those things that when I gave News Limited a kicking and other big old stream media a kicking as well. And I did touch on some of the stuff that Google does and did say, yes, it is a monopoly and we need more competition in search. But Google's CEO in Australia last Friday has basically said that, yeah, we're going to have to leave Australia. Now, the thing is, I said, why don't they just remove news content? Well, Google said, well, it's too hard. Yet they started a trial last week, as I think it was Barry Schwartz, hi Barry, reported. And as I've said, the news section in Google, you have to be approved for that, so it's curated content. So they could definitely switch that one off. I guess the thing that they would have trouble with is based on the definition of what the government is calling a news organisation. I went through the media, the guidelines that the government put out. And theoretically, I reckon I could qualify to become a media organisation that would be eligible to get some of this cash. And that's because I've had a YouTube video for 16 years and I've been bringing information to the Australian public around things like internet censorship, like things like outer and domain names, and other newsworthy things about the internet, including marketing. And we reach and we make all the other thresholds, of course. So theoretically, you could say, well, geez, all the YouTubers and bloggers could benefit from this as well when you read the guidelines, if they correctly jump through all the hoops. And so that could be difficult, but I mean, you're talking about Google. You're talking about a company with thousands and thousands of engineers. And for Google to say they don't make money out of news, well, they don't have ads on the news section. They don't have ads on the news tab, right? However, most people don't use that when they're actually searching for news. And to show you what I mean, we can have a look here at Google's. This is Google's own data. Although I found some of this is not accurate. This column here is definitely not accurate. I don't know how they come up with this. However, this is true. These are the these are the trending topics. So maybe ones that are out of the ordinary, ones that have spiked or come up during the year of 2020. They're not necessarily based on total volume, and I can show you some of that. Certainly, these are not based on total volume of search keywords, but the thing to note here is Google is saying these are news topics, right? And that's a news topic and that's a news topic. And then they're also saying that these were the two biggest searches that Australians did in 2020. So you would say, then kind of news is the biggest driver of traffic to Google in 2020. And then when we go and have a look at just generally search volumes, so we have a look at, well, you can have a look at this one yourself, but throw some of these in. I don't know, I seriously don't know how they come up with this list. Because when you go and have a look, that's just, Kim Jong-un, way back here, Tom Hanks, pretty much nothing in comparison. Did I say nothing? Nothing in comparison to the other ones. Anyway, but when we have a look at search in Australia for 2020, and this is, I haven't put any keywords in here, right? So Google will just show me the highest volume search phrases, and you can sort between top or rising and everything else. Well, you can see here it's weather and news. Coronavirus, that's right, and Facebook. So, Google. So, for Google to say it doesn't make money off news, that's probably directly, you could say, off their news section. That's probably the case. But Mel Silver, the CEO of Google, put out a video last week. It was a bit too scripted and choreographed for me, and it came over a little bit insincere, because one of the things that she said was that paying to link to sites is not how search engines work. Well, search engines wouldn't exist unless we had paid links to sites, right? It's just that Google's not doing the paying for those links. I don't know how this is going to resolve itself, but one thing that I am thinking about is what happens if Google does pull search products out of Australia. So that would be ads and organic, basically. Not anywhere where news content would appear. Images, probably, as well, because it's a search product. So that's all your little search tabs. And so things like, presumably, Gmail, Google Suite would stay, Maps would stay, but, Google My Business would be gone, so it would have a massive, massive impact on the Australian economy, and what the Prime Minister has said that it's blackmail. Well, I don't think so. I think blackmail means that if you don't do this thing, I'm going to tell the world something terrible about you. That's not what's going on here. It's sort of more extortion. And Google has become so big now that they could threaten governments. And governments would have to look at this and say, well, shit, if Google's saying they're going to pull out, what does that mean to Australian businesses? Now, given that we have a monopoly, this is what happens, right? This is where we're at. So, and it makes me think fundamentally about what search is, right? Because I only really came around with computers. Like there was, you used to go to the library and you used to search through file cards. You used to use indexes in books or alphabetizing in Yellow Pages. And the Yellow Pages was also full of free listings as well. And they had paid ads. But no one was going to the Yellow Pages for the news, which is the argument of old news media. And basically this is as someone in the office says, two rich kids fighting at the playground. Thanks, Heath. Because it's like, it's a great big club, but you ain't in it, right? As George Carlin said. And whatever happens here, Google saying that, they're trying to make it sound like it's all about organic and it's open free web. Well, we know it's not an open free web anymore. And we've done shows on that, and we can show examples of where Google will show one thing and DuckDuckGo would show what you would expect, but Google hasn't. We know that Google's been out there and said that, we change the results based on our own internal policies. So they do edit the content as well, and they certainly are outside just their ranking factors and their algorithm. There are other algorithms, like we saw during the election, like I did a show on, where they are censoring to some extent or changing or not allowing people to see things that they can see in other search engines quite easily. Call it what you want. But I think we're in for an interesting 6 months. And Google has said, we've got a better idea. How about a news showcase? That just sounds like paid, curated news. The whole thing just doesn't sit right with me. And Google talking about a free and open web and all this sort of stuff. Well, if you do a search on your mobile phone, the first screen you see is all paid links, right? It's all ads. Now, if you go to Bing, 19 results on that first page will be paid and only 4 of them will be organic. For a lot of searches that I've done anyway. DuckDuckGo I will probably use. I'm using more and more and more. And I've got specialist search engines that I'll use for looking for old scientific publications and stuff like that I'm interested in that I just can't find in Google. And we always hope that would be a thing. We would see other search engines spring up and we'd have not so much of a monopoly. But, as it happens, those things haven't eventuated, or if they have, they probably get bought up before we even hear of them. So if Google does move out, the questions will be, well, will Australians still be able to get google.com, or would we have to use a VPN to see google.com? And if so, if a lot of Australians are going to start to use google.com, could we still do ads? So there's this debate, Google earned $4 billion last year, but they only paid $59 million in tax. Presumably that's not GST. That's probably just company tax. But it's a really difficult one, because Google is way too powerful now, and lovely people at Google. It's not about them. It's about the monster that is Google. I would say Google's been a little bit disingenuous in saying that they can't remove news. I think they could remove a lot of it. I think they could instruct businesses how to use robots.txt, and that would fix everything. The problem is then, you're not going to get as many people coming to Google if all those big news sites aren't found in Google. So this is a symbiotic relationship between old media and new media. How it ends, we'll probably be the losers. Whichever way it goes, right? But I'd love to know your thoughts. Please share and subscribe, because we've got a webinar coming up in mid-February, mid to late February. So I'd love to see you there if you are a retailer. And please tell your friends, and love to know your thoughts. There's been a few passionate people on LinkedIn talking about it as well, so hit me up there and we'll have a discussion there as well. Curious times. Thanks very much, everyone.